"Dad, my stomach hurts." The words tore out of Emma before she could stop them, her 5-year-old voice crackling through the phone pressed against Sofia's ear while she knelt on the cold marble floor of the mansion kitchen at 11:16 p.m., scrubbing tiles with a brush that had worn down to its plastic core. Her black and white maid's uniform was soaked through with cleaning solution and something darker, her own blood from the beating Douglas had delivered that morning. Sofia's hand trembled as she gripped the phone. "Baby, I know. We'll be home soon. Just 10 more minutes." But there would be no home. Not in 10 minutes. Not ever. The eviction notice with its 12-day deadline in red ink was burning in her pocket alongside the $5 bill that represented everything she had left in this world. Everything. 3 floors above, in a private study overlooking the city lights of San Francisco, Nicholas Bianchi was reviewing security footage on multiple screens when Marco burst through the door without knocking. In 15 years of working for him, Marco had never done this. "We have something," Marco said, breathing hard. His phone was extended, showing a traffic camera feed from Highway 101. A broken-down sedan on the shoulder. A woman in a maid's uniform trying to shield a small child from the bitter October wind. Dead leaves skittering across the asphalt. Their breath visible in clouds. The footage was grainy, time-stamped 11:32 p.m. The woman's head was bowed, her shoulders curved around the child like she could protect her from the world itself. Nicholas's eyes narrowed. He had spent 15 years training himself not to feel. 15 years building an empire on the ashes of betrayal. But something in that image, the way the woman held the child, the fragility of them against the dark highway, made something cold and dangerous stir in his chest. "Where is this?" His voice was quiet. That was how you knew Nicholas was dangerous. Never the shouting. Never the rage. Just that voice, deep and solid like an oath. Highway 101. North, heading into the wind. The sedan's been disabled for 43 minutes. No other vehicles have stopped. Of course no one had stopped. People don't stop for invisible women anymore. Meanwhile, on that darkened stretch of highway, Sofia was trying to calculate how long they could survive in the sedan with the heat running. The gas gauge showed a quarter tank. Maybe 2 hours. Maybe less. Emma's voice came again, smaller this time. "Mommy, my stomach." "I know, baby. I know it hurts. Is it going to be okay? Like last time?" Sofia's throat tightened. Last time. The emergency room that had cost $4,000. The surgery that wasn't supposed to happen but did. The debt that had transformed into Douglas's hands around her throat, his voice in her ear, "You owe me now. You belong to me now." She pulled Emma closer, breathing in the sweet apple smell of her hair, trying to calculate which was worse, the pain in Emma's small body or the pain of knowing there was nothing she could do about it. No money. No insurance. No choices left. The rumble came first, a low sound cutting through the wind. Then the headlights. 3 black SUVs crested the hill behind them, moving fast. Sofia's entire body went rigid. The vehicle slowed as they approached, and she knew in that moment that every decision she had ever made, every compromise, every moment of silence, every time she had swallowed her own blood to keep Emma safe, had led to this. The lead SUV pulled alongside them. The rear door opened. Nicholas Bianchi emerged into the October darkness, and the wind seemed to stop moving. He was tall, 6'3", built like someone who had learned violence before he learned to read, and he wore an open black shirt beneath an overcoat that cost more than Sofia's rent for 2 years. Marco and Luca flanked him, their suits black and perfectly tailored, their eyes the color of guns. His gaze fell on the sedan. On the woman inside. On the small child visible in the back seat. Then his eyes found the marks. Bruises circled Sofia's throat like a necklace made of violence. Handprints. Dark purple bleeding into yellow. The marks told a story that his own betrayed past made him recognize instantly. His brother had left marks like that on their mother. right before he sold the family to enemies. Nicholas's jaw clenched. He moved toward the sedan with the deliberate steps of a man accustomed to having the world reorganize itself around his presence. Sofia's hand instinctively moved to lock the door, but it wouldn't matter. Nothing would matter. He knocked on the window. Sofia didn't roll it down. She couldn't. Her hands wouldn't obey her. Nicholas leaned down, his face level with hers through the glass. Up close, she could see the scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone, a thin white line on dark skin. A scar that told its own story of violence survived. "Get in the car," he said. His voice made the words sound inevitable, like gravity. "We don't need," Sofia started, but he cut her off with a single gesture of his hand. "That was not a request. I don't know who you are. I'm calling the police. You are a woman with $5 and an eviction notice, trying to keep a sick child alive on a highway in the dark." His eyes held hers through the glass. "I am offering you shelter. You can accept that offer now, or you can explain to me in 3 days why your daughter is still sick and you are still broke. Choose." Sofia's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't work the lock. Luca opened the door from outside. The cold rushed in like something alive. Emma whimpered in the back seat. Before Sofia could move, Nicholas was already reaching for the child. Sofia lunged forward to stop him, but he held up his hands. "Look at me," he said to Emma, his voice completely different now, soft, almost gentle. "My name is Nicholas. I have a car with heat. Real heat. Not like this cold box. Do you like cars?" Emma stared at him, her small face pale, her eyes enormous. "I like cars," she whispered. "Then come. I will show you." That was how it started. That was how Sofia Voss, invisible maid, began to disappear into something else. But before we continue with what happened next, before we see how this single moment would reshape her entire world, we need to go back. We need to understand who she was before Nicholas Bianchi emerged from the darkness. We need to go back 3 weeks earlier, to the beginning of Sofia's story, when she was just another name in Victoria Ashford's mansion, a name that barely registered as human. We need to understand what brought her to that highway. What brought her to those marks around her throat. This all began on a Tuesday morning, at 5:51 a.m., when Sofia's alarm did not go off because she could not afford a phone plan that included alarms, so she set one mentally, that ancient human trick of thinking hard about a time until her body woke up at the exact moment needed. The basement room where she slept with Emma was cold. Always cold. She rose in darkness, moved carefully so as not to wake her daughter, and dressed in the black and white uniform that Victoria Ashford provided as part of her compensation, a word Victoria used loosely, given that Sofia had been working at the mansion for 8 months without receiving a single paycheck. 8 months. The reason was always the same. There had been some confusion with the paperwork. There had been some issue with the account. Victoria needed to verify certain information. It was always about to be resolved. In the meantime, Sofia received room and board, which meant a basement corner and access to the kitchen's discarded food. She had calculated last week that she was working for approximately 87 cents per hour. Sofia moved upstairs to the mansion's kitchen, the vast commercial space where Victoria entertained San Francisco's elite and where Sofia's job was to disappear. To clean before anyone arrived. To be invisible during the events. To erase all evidence of her existence by midnight. The kitchen was spotless because Sofia had left it spotless the night before. Still, she checked every surface. Checked twice. This was the job. This was how she survived. She pulled out the supplies and began her morning routine: floors, countertops, windows, appliances. The work was methodical, repetitive, the kind of work that allowed your mind to wander to places you didn't want it to go. Emma was still sick. The cough that had started in September was getting worse, not better. Sofia had no money for a doctor. The last doctor had cost $4,000, and that had been only the consultation, only the beginning of what needed to happen for Emma to live. The eviction notice had arrived yesterday. 12 days. The basement room she rented from Mrs. Chen had been her anchor for 2 years. The one place that felt almost like home. But Mrs. Chen had sold the building. Sofia had 1 more week to find a new place, which meant she needed first month's rent plus deposit, which meant she needed money, which meant she needed to be paid. She needed Victoria to pay her. The marble floor gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Sofia scrubbed. At 9:15 a.m., Victoria emerged from upstairs, already dressed in the kind of clothes that made Sofia's entire month's worth of work seem worthless. A silk blouse. A designer skirt. Shoes that probably cost $1,000. Victoria Ashford was 53 years old but looked 40, which was its own kind of work: personal trainers, dermatologists, nutritionists, the kind of maintenance that came from old money and the certainty that the world would always be beautiful for people like her. "Sofia," Victoria said, her voice the texture of ice. "I need to speak with you about something." Sofia stood, keeping her eyes down. This was the safest posture. The jewelry went missing from the dining room last night. A bracelet. Sapphires. Worth roughly $12,000. Sofia's entire body went cold. "I didn't." "I'm not accusing you directly," Victoria continued, her voice smooth as oil. "I'm simply saying that access to that room was extremely limited. And the household is spreading rumors. They're saying there's a thief among the staff. They're saying it was probably the maid." "That would be you." "I would never." "What you would or would not do is irrelevant," Victoria said, smiling. It was not a kind smile. "The rumor has already spread through the entire neighborhood. Do you understand what that means? It means you will never work in this city again. It means every family from here to the peninsula knows your face as a thief. It means you are finished." Sofia's hands were shaking. "The bracelet will be returned," Victoria continued. "Found in the garden, found in the street, found somewhere. The rumors will be retracted. But that will happen only if you do exactly what I tell you to do. Not if you understand." Sofia nodded. "Good. There will be a dinner tonight. Very important people. Investors. You will serve. You will clean. You will be invisible. And afterward, you will understand that loyalty is the only commodity you have left to sell." At 11:33 p.m., after the dinner had ended, after the guests had left, Sofia was on her knees scrubbing the marble floor when Douglas Hale arrived. He was a man of 41, built wide and solid, with the kind of face that had learned to smile while doing terrible things. He was Victoria's business partner, she would learn later. They had interests together. Profitable interests. "This is the one?" he asked Victoria, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with a glass of champagne. "This is the one," Victoria confirmed. "She is reliable. She is desperate. She has a child to protect. Those are the 3 qualities you require, are they not?" "Stand up," Douglas told Sofia. Sofia stood. "You owe Victoria money," he said. It was not a question. The jewelry incident. The rumors. The threat to her business. "Do you understand the cost of that?" "I didn't take anything." "I would never." He hit her then, a open-palmed strike across her face that knocked her sideways into the counter. Stars exploded across her vision. "You owe," he said again, very quietly. "And I am going to make sure you pay." This is how Sofia Voss, maid, became Sofia Voss, property of Douglas Hale. This is how desperation transforms into something darker. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. 3 weeks before Douglas Hale's hand crashed across her face, Sofia Voss was on her knees in a basement apartment that smelled like mold and desperation, pressing her palm against her daughter's forehead while the sky outside the single-high window was still dark. Emma was 5 years old and curled on their shared mattress like a question mark, her small voice thin and uncertain in the silence. "Dad, my stomach hurts," she whispered, though her father had been gone for 3 years, dead in a car that belonged to a man who never paid his debts. Sofia had become both mother and father in that absence, which meant she was twice as afraid and half as capable of protecting anything that mattered. The clock on the wall read 6:15 in the morning. Sofia's hand was still cool from sleep. She felt no fever, just the slight warmth of a child who had spent the night breathing shallow and small. "I know, baby," Sofia said, and her voice came out like a candle in the wind, trembling. "I know it hurts." "Where does it hurt most?" Emma pointed to a place just below her ribs, her eyes glassy and distant. Sofia had no thermometer. She had no children's pain medicine left, though she had a bottle hidden in the kitchen cabinet that cost $14 at the pharmacy 2 weeks ago. She had used it twice since then because Emma complained often now, and Sofia had learned to recognize the sound of real pain in her daughter's voice versus the sound of a child who was simply lonely and cold in their shared darkness. "The medicine will help," Sofia told her, and she rose from the mattress in one smooth motion because she had learned long ago not to groan or show hesitation around her daughter. Children knew when their mothers were afraid. Emma could taste it in the air like copper. The apartment was 6 blocks from the Ashford mansion where Sofia cleaned marble floors for $13 an hour under the watch of a woman named Victoria Ashford who treated human beings the way other people treated dust. The medicine cabinet held 3 bottles of various remedies, a box of bandages, and a note on a torn piece of paper that read, "Call Dr. Morrison, $75 copay," in Sofia's own handwriting, written in a moment of desperate optimism that had long since evaporated. She measured out the pain medicine using the plastic dropper, careful, precise. Emma swallowed it without complaint. Then Sofia sat on the edge of the mattress and stroked her daughter's hair until the medicine took hold and Emma's eyes grew heavy. At 6:11 a.m., Sofia showered in the bathroom where the tile was cracked and the water pressure was weak, a stream that felt like a suggestion rather than a promise. She dressed in her own clothes first, jeans worn thin at the knees, a sweater pulled from a free bin at the community center, and then she changed in the staff room at the mansion into the black and white uniform that transformed her into something invisible. The uniform was the color of absence. She arrived at the service entrance at 7:04 a.m., 3 minutes later than she preferred but 3 minutes earlier than the other maids. 2 women, Denise and Patricia, were already in the staff room changing. They looked up when Sofia entered, exchanged a glance that lasted exactly 2 seconds, and then looked away. This was the language of the Ashford mansion's female staff, the glance that said, "Do not sit with us." The silence that said, "Do not speak to us." Do not become entangled in our lives because we are too busy protecting our own survival. Sofia understood completely. The foyer of the Ashford mansion was a cathedral to wealth, a space so large that footsteps echoed like prayers in a church with no God. The floor was Italian marble in shades of grey and white, a pattern that had been laid in 1987 and had been polished by the hands of dozens of women since then. Victoria Ashford appeared at 9:31 a.m., descending the main staircase in a dress the color of cream, moving like a woman who had never once doubted that the world would bend itself to her convenience. Her eyes found Sofia immediately, though Sofia was bent over the floor, focused on the work of making something already perfect seem even more perfect. Victoria's shoes, Italian leather, probably worth more than Sofia's weekly earnings, touched the bottom step. Then the next. Then she walked directly onto the section of floor Sofia had just finished, the marble still wet with cleaning solution, her footprint dark and deliberate against the shine. "Again," Victoria said, and her voice was not raised, which somehow made it worse than if she had screamed. "Do it properly this time, Sofia. Your lack of attention is becoming tiresome." There was no anger in her tone. There was something far more chilling, a complete and total absence of regard, the way a person might speak to a tool that was not functioning correctly. Sofia did not look up. She did not speak. She watched Victoria's footprints fade as the solution dried, and then she began again, because this was the work of being invisible, to erase all evidence of having existed at all. By lunchtime, Sofia was in the staff kitchenette, a small room with a broken microwave and a refrigerator that hummed constantly like a dying animal. She ate alone at the small table in the corner, a sandwich made from 2 pieces of the mansion's leftover bread and a slice of cheese from the bulk section at the discount grocery, purchased 3 days ago and now slightly hard around the edges. She pulled out her phone, a model from 3 years ago with a cracked screen protector, and opened the text message that had arrived at 2:24 p.m. the day before. It was from Emma's school, from the nurse named Helen who saw Emma 3 times a week for one reason or another. The message read, "Emma complained of stomach pain again today. 3rd time this week. Please call and schedule an appointment with her primary care physician." Sofia's heart contracted into a fist. She opened her banking app with 2 fingers on the cracked screen. The number appeared in white text against a blue background, and she read it the way a person reads a death sentence, $347.82. This was her entire world. This was the difference between keeping Emma alive and not keeping Emma alive. Rent was due in 8 days. The number was $1,200 because they lived in San Francisco, and San Francisco was a place where poor people lived in the spaces between other people's wealth. Emma's asthma medicine was $45 a month with her school clinic, but the schools had closed the clinic 2 months ago due to budget cuts, which meant that asthma medicine would now cost $89 because it was a private prescription. Groceries for the week, milk, eggs, bread, rice, beans, the things that kept a child alive, was approximately $62. That was $1,200 plus $89 plus $62, which was $1,351. She had $347.82. But underneath all of this, sitting on top of her like a stone, was the number that consumed her entirely. $85,000. This was money she had borrowed from a man named Douglas Hale 3 years ago when Emma had appendicitis, when Sofia was working 2 jobs and had no insurance, when the emergency room at St. Mary's had told her that without surgery her 5-year-old daughter might die. The surgery had cost $47,000. Douglas Hale had loaned her that money at a rate that seemed reasonable at the time, just 14% interest per annum. Sofia had signed papers she did not fully understand, written in language that felt legal and distant. 3 years later, with payments made sporadically whenever she could steal enough from her own survival to hand it to him, the debt had become $85,000. Interest compounding. Penalties added. Money she had never borrowed but that existed on paper like a ghost that grew larger every month. She put the phone away. At 5:06 p.m., Sofia left the mansion through the service entrance and walked the 6 blocks to the basement apartment. The sun was already starting to fade in October, the light turning the color of old coins. Leaves rattled across the sidewalk like something trying to escape. Emma was curled on the couch when Sofia arrived, still wearing her school clothes, her small frame pressed into the cushions like she was trying to disappear into them. Her hand was pressed against her stomach. "Hey, baby," Sofia said, and she knelt down in front of the couch the way she always did, already reaching for her daughter's shirt. "Let me see." Emma lifted her shirt without complaint. Her small belly was pale and unmarked, as normal as any 5-year-old's stomach, and Sofia pressed gently against it with her fingers, feeling for something that might explain the pain, some hidden thing that her mother's hands might somehow heal. There was nothing. Just the small, bony architecture of a child's body, thin from a diet of beans and rice and whatever fruit was on sale. "I don't see anything wrong," Sofia said, and the lie tasted like metal on her tongue. "But tomorrow we'll find a way to see a doctor." "Okay? Tomorrow we'll figure it out." Emma nodded, not because she believed her mother, children always knew when they were being lied to, but because she understood that sometimes mothers needed their children to pretend to believe, and love meant pretending. Sofia stayed on her knees beside the couch as the light outside the window faded from coin-colored to gray to nothing at all. She held her daughter's small hand and did not know that 6 blocks away, in a penthouse office overlooking the city, a man named Douglas Hale was leaning back in his leather chair, listening to Victoria Ashford's voice on the other end of the phone. "She is becoming a problem," Victoria was saying, her voice crisp and clear and empty of mercy. "Too many questions. Too much of my time. She needs to understand the cost of her carelessness." "I will handle it," Douglas said, and his voice was the sound of a blade being sharpened. She will understand. By tomorrow night, she will understand completely. What Sofia did not know was that tomorrow would bring the hand that crashed across her face, the beginning of a darkness she could not yet imagine, the moment when invisible became something far more dangerous than unseen. But tonight, in the basement apartment with her daughter's hand in hers, Sofia was still just a woman who loved her child, still just a maid with $347.82 in a bank account and a prayer that somehow, tomorrow would be kinder than today. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. Sofia's fingers trembled as she smoothed Emma's hair back from her forehead at 6:15 that morning, the child's small hand gripping her mother's wrist with the desperation of someone who knew, even at 5 years old, that stability was an illusion. The walk to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes, and Sofia counted every one of them, her body screaming with pain from yesterday's encounter with Douglas Hale, the bruises on her ribs sending electric shocks through her torso with each breath. Emma asked no questions about the swollen eye, about the careful way her mother moved, about why they had missed dinner last night. Children were like that, they absorbed catastrophe without needing explanation, the way plants drink poison without comment. Across the street, a black sedan idled with its engine running. Sofia noticed it in the way you notice a splinter, a small irritation that did not quite register as danger. 2 men in the front seat, both wearing dark glasses despite the October overcast. She thought nothing of it. The city was full of cars, full of waiting people. She kissed Emma's forehead at the school gate, watched her disappear into the building, and began the walk back to the Ashford mansion with $5 in her pocket and the eviction notice burning in her jacket like a coal. The kitchen was already humming when she arrived at 7:15 a.m. The other staff members nodded at her as she clocked in, their eyes sliding away from her face with the studied indifference of people who had learned not to ask questions. Sofia pulled on her uniform, tied back her hair with shaking hands, and began scrubbing the marble counters. The motion was meditative, almost automatic. Wipe, rinse, wipe. Wipe, rinse, wipe. The kind of work that did not require thought, only endurance. At 9:04 a.m., the service entrance door opened with a sharp crack of sound. Douglas Hale did not move like a man who expected to encounter resistance. He moved like a predator who had already calculated the kill. Mid-40s, expensive suit in charcoal grey, the kind that cost more than Sofia's monthly rent, his dark hair slicked back to reveal a face all sharp angles and colder calculation. A diamond ring caught the light on his pinky finger, and his shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He dismissed the other staff with a casual gesture that carried the weight of absolute command. "Out," he said simply. They left. Sofia continued wiping the counter, her muscles locked tight, her breathing shallow. She could feel him approaching, could smell the cologne that clung to his clothes like a warning. "The money," Douglas said. His voice was not loud. It was something worse, it was conversational, the tone someone uses when discussing the weather with a neighbor. "The 85,000. 7 days. All of it." Sofia's hand stilled. The cloth dripped soap-colored water onto the pristine marble. "I have been paying every month," Sofia said, each word a separate act of courage. "You said I had more time." "You said?" "I changed my mind." Douglas stepped closer, and the kitchen seemed to shrink around him. 7 days, Sofia. All of it. Or we renegotiate the terms of your arrangement. Sofia turned to face him. This was her mistake, this small act of defiance. His hand shot out like a striking snake, fingers wrapping around her throat, and he slammed her against the stainless steel counter with force that sent lightning through her spine. The breath exploded from her lungs. "I have clients," Douglas whispered, his lips so close to her ear she could feel the heat of his breath. "Very wealthy men. Very specific tastes. They would pay $50,000 a night for someone like you. That would solve your problem quite quickly, would it not?" Sofia clawed at his wrist, her vision darkening at the edges. She could not breathe. The panic was bright and immediate, animal panic, the kind that made her body betray her, that turned her limbs to water. Douglas released her throat just long enough for her to gasp one breath, and then his fist caught her across the face. Once. Twice. 3 times. The world became sound and fire. She fell, her knees striking the hard floor, and his shoe came up, connecting with her ribs with a sound like wood splitting. 90 seconds. That was all it took to break something in a person that science said could never be fixed. When he left, stepping over her like she was a stain on the floor, his final words hung in the air like a curse, 7 days to decide. The money. Or I take the girl. Sofia lay on the cold kitchen tiles for 6 minutes before her body would obey her mind's commands to move. She tasted copper and something worse. She did not cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere on the Greyhound bus that brought her to San Francisco 3 years ago, desperate and foolish and alone. She pushed herself up on trembling arms, her ribs screaming, her left eye already swelling shut. The bruises on her throat bloomed like flowers in fast motion, handprints that would tell anyone who looked closely exactly what had happened here. She cleaned the blood from the floor because it was her job. She washed her face in the staff bathroom and returned to work because losing this job meant losing the apartment, and losing the apartment meant losing Emma to whatever system claimed children whose mothers had failed them. At 11:48 a.m., Victoria Ashford walked through the kitchen. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost what Sofia made in a year. Her blonde hair was arranged in a perfect wave, her makeup flawless, her expression the particular emptiness of someone who had learned to see other people as problems to be solved or obstacles to be removed. Her eyes passed over Sofia's bruises without pausing, without acknowledgement. The silence was complicity. The silence was a contract signed in blood. By evening, Sofia's ribs moved like broken glass with each breath. Every movement was agony. She finished her shift at 6:44 p.m., collected her $72 in tips, and walked home in the darkness with the weight of $85,000 strapped to her chest like stones. The eviction notice was slipped under her apartment door. She found it at 6:53 p.m., the red ink deadline screaming at her, 12 days. 12 days before the landlord changed the locks. 12 days before she and Emma were on the street. She picked up Emma from after-school care at 7:33 p.m. The moment her daughter saw her face, the little girl's expression crumpled. "What happened, Mama?" Emma's voice was so small. "I fell, baby," Sofia lied, and the lie tasted like rust. "Mama is okay." But Emma was clutching her own stomach, her face pale, her eyes squeezed shut. "It hurts again," Emma whispered. "My stomach hurts so bad." Sofia knelt down, a mistake, because the motion sent knives through her ribs, and pulled her daughter close. "I know, sweetheart," Sofia said into Emma's hair. "Soon. We will figure this out soon. I promise." But she did not know how. She did not know that at that exact moment, in a corner office overlooking the bay, Marco was placing a file on Nicholas Bianchi's desk. Security footage, dark and grainy, showing Douglas Hale slamming Sofia against a counter, the violence unfolding in silence, every brutal second recorded by the household surveillance system that had been deliberately disabled for the next 72 hours by a contact who worked in Victoria's home and believed that some debts mattered more than paychecks. Nicholas watched the footage 3 times without speaking. His jaw was a line of iron. Marco stood silent, waiting, understanding that some moments required no words. "Find them," Nicholas finally said, his voice like distant thunder. "Before he moves. Find them and bring them in." What Sofia did not know was that the rain would stop that night, that the cold would cut like a blade, and that by 9:22 p.m. tomorrow evening, a black SUV would pull up beside her broken-down car on Highway 101, and the man inside would see the handprints on her throat and recognize them as the ghost of his own family's devastation. She did not know that her life, in precisely 29 hours and 14 minutes, would fracture and reassemble into something entirely new. But for now, in the darkness of her basement apartment with Emma asleep against her side, Sofia simply held her daughter and did not dare believe that tomorrow could bring anything but more darkness. The city lights flickered beyond her small window like stars drowning in oil. The bathroom was white tile and fluorescent light. Sofia's reflection stared back at her like a stranger, bruised throat, black eye spreading like spilled ink, blood still crusted at her hairline. The eviction notice lay on the sink, its reading deadline screaming at her, 12 days. 12 days to find $5,000 she did not have. 12 days to move Emma out of the basement apartment that smelled like mold and broken promises. She pulled Emma's shirt up slowly, carefully, as if the fabric itself might shatter. The bruises were there. Dark purple, finger-shaped, spreading across her daughter's small ribs like a map of hell. Sofia's hands began to shake. These were not there yesterday. She would have seen them. She would have known. But she had worked a double shift yesterday. 16 hours at the mansion, polishing floors on her knees, and Emma had been home alone after school for 2 hours. 2 hours. Someone had been in her daughter's home. Sofia's scream came from somewhere deeper than her lungs. Nicholas found her still standing there, Emma crying in the bedroom beyond, Sofia frozen with Emma's shirt still bunched around her small shoulders. He took in the bruises in one glance. His entire body went rigid. The muscles in his jaw clenched so hard she thought his teeth might crack. "When?" he said. Not a question. A demand, spoken in a voice like distant thunder rolling toward something it would destroy. "Last week," Sofia whispered. "I worked late." She was alone. "She never told me." "She never?" Nicholas turned and his fist went through the wall beside the bedroom door. The drywall crumbled. No sound came from him. That was worse somehow, the violence of it contained in pure silence. Marco appeared in the doorway instantly, Luca a heartbeat behind him. They saw the child's bruised ribs. The lieutenant's faces shifted into something lethal. "Dr. Reeves," Nicholas said, his voice steady now, which meant he had found the place inside himself where rage became mathematics. "Call him now. Then I want every contact we have. Every name. I want Douglas Hale and Victoria Ashford in front of me before noon. I want them alive." "Barely." Marco nodded once and disappeared into the hallway, phone already at his ear. Sofia could not move. Her daughter was crying. Her daughter had been hurt. Someone had put their hands on Emma and Sofia had not been there to stop it, had not even known it was happening. The knowledge was a blade wrapped in ice, cutting into everything she believed about herself as a mother. Nicholas crouched beside Emma, who was curled into herself on the bed. He moved slowly, giving her time to understand he was not a threat. His hand, scarred and enormous, trembled as he gently examined the bruises on her ribs, on her back, across her small shoulders. Everywhere. The violence had been systematic. Thorough. "I am sorry," he said to Emma, and his voice broke on the words. "I am so sorry I did not find you sooner." Tears streamed down his face. Sofia had never seen him cry. In 8 months of knowing him, through violence and bloodshed and midnight conversations, she had never seen Nicholas Bianchi shed a single tear. But here he was, kneeling beside a 5-year-old child, his shoulders shaking with the force of a rage so profound it could only express itself as grief. Emma, small and confused and hurting, reached out and touched his face where the tears were. "Are you sad?" she asked. "Yes," Nicholas said. "I am very sad. But I am going to make sure no one ever hurts you again. Do you understand me? No one. Ever." Dr. Reeves arrived at 7:03 a.m. He examined Emma methodically, documenting everything with the clinical precision of a man who had seen too much of this particular horror. Blunt force trauma. Defensive bruising along the ribs suggesting the child had tried to protect herself. The doctor's expression grew darker with each discovery. "This is recent," he said. "Within the last 72 hours. And it is severe enough that she should have been in significant pain." "She was," Sofia said quietly. She kept saying her stomach hurt. "I thought it was from eating poorly, from stress. I thought." The doctor placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did not know. But I do need to report this to Child Protective Services. It is required by law. Douglas Hale needs to be arrested before that report goes through, or—" "Give me 12 hours, Nicholas said. It was not a request. 12 hours and the man who did this will be in federal custody. The report goes through at noon tomorrow. By then, the FBI will already have him. You will have him arrested, documented, every piece of evidence secured. It will be cleaner than trying to build the case from outside. 12 hours. The doctor studied him. Whatever he saw in Nicholas's face made him nod slowly. 12 hours. Not a minute more. At 8:02 a.m., Sofia locked herself in the bathroom again. The mirror showed her what she had always known, a maid, invisible, worthless. 31 years old but looking 40, her hands raw from years of scrubbing other people's homes, her eyes hollow from years of pretending everything was manageable when it was not. She had failed to protect her daughter. The one thing, the only thing she was supposed to do as a mother, and she had failed. The prescription bottle sat on the bathroom counter. Dr. Reeves had left it for Emma's pain. 80 tablets. How many would it take? Sofia's hand shook as she picked up the bottle, read the label, thought about how easy it would be. How Emma would be better off without her dragging her daughter down with every failed choice, every wrong decision, every moment she could not be enough. Mama. Emma's small voice came through the locked door. Mama, are you okay? Sofia's hand froze. The bottle fell to the tile floor, rolling under the sink. She could not move. Her daughter was asking if she was okay. Her daughter, who had been hurt and was still worried about her mother. Sofia unlocked the door and scooped Emma into her arms, holding her like a lifeline, like she was the only thing keeping her from disappearing entirely. Nicholas found them like that. He stood in the doorway for a long moment without speaking. Sofia did not need to explain. He understood immediately what almost happened in that bathroom. His expression softened into something tender and terrible. He crouched beside them, his presence somehow grounding, somehow safe. You are not alone anymore, he said quietly. Do you understand me? You are not alone. Not anymore. At 9:15 a.m., the war room was alive with movement. 12 men in tactical black moved like ghosts through the safe house, weapons visible, violence contained in the coiled silence of professionals preparing for execution. Marco coordinated with FBI contacts, Nicholas's intelligence network having fed federal agents careful information for months now, building an airtight case. Luca pulled surveillance footage onto screens, Victoria Ashford's mansion, traffic cameras, banking records from the past 7 years. The scope of the operation was staggering. 43 women moved in 7 years. $18 million in revenue. Connections spiraling into trafficking networks in 5 states. Victoria and Douglas, the architect and the enforcer, had built a machine designed to turn desperation into profit. 11 o'clock, Nicholas said to his men, his voice restored to its usual granite calm. Full tactical. FBI moves at 11:15. I want Douglas alive long enough to watch his empire burn. Victoria too. No mercy. No quick deaths. They live with what they have done in federal cages. 40 years minimum. They wake up every morning knowing they will never leave. That is the price. The men nodded. They understood. They always understood. Douglas Hale received the call at 10:24 a.m., sitting in his office downtown, playing with the pen on his mahogany desk like a man without worries. Mr. Hale? We have a mutual friend who would like to meet. The Italian restaurant on 5th Street. Noon. Come alone. Who is, but the line was already dead. He should have known. Some part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive for 42 years, screamed at him to run. But arrogance is a powerful drug, and Douglas had been intoxicated with it for so long he could no longer recognize danger when it whispered through the telephone line. Victoria Ashford was arrested at 10:45 a.m. during a charity brunch at her mansion. FBI agents in tactical gear poured through the front doors like a flood. Guests screamed. Champagne flutes shattered on marble floors. Agent Morrison pressed her face against the very counter she had once stood behind, radiating cold elegance. Victoria Ashford, You are under arrest for human trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and 47 additional federal charges, Morrison said, reading from a tablet. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The list of crimes took 90 seconds to read aloud. You have no proof, Victoria said, her composure crystalline even in handcuffs. Morrison held up the tablet. Financial records. Wire transfers. Photographs of victims with dates and locations. Video footage spanning years. Nicholas Bianchi has been building this case for 11 months, Morrison said quietly. You have been under surveillance since January. Every transaction. Every victim. Every lie. 40 years minimum. Welcome to the rest of your life. Victoria's elegant mask cracked. Her face drained of all color. The black SUVs pulled up to the Italian restaurant at exactly 11:36 a.m. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet concrete and dying things. Douglas Hale sat in the private booth in the back, the candlelight making shadows dance across his face. He stood when Nicholas entered. One look at Luca and Marco's faces, and he sat back down. Nicholas slid into the booth across from him. He placed a phone on the table. A live feed. Victoria being led out in handcuffs, cameras flashing, the media circus already beginning. Douglas watched his partner's empire collapse on every screen. His hands began to shake. You touched a child, Nicholas said softly. You beat a woman who was already broken. You built an empire on suffering. I can pay you, Douglas whispered. I have money, I have. I do not want your money, Nicholas said. Death would be mercy. Too quick. Too easy. Too clean. You are going to live, Douglas. In federal prison. For 40 years. And every day you will wake up and remember what you did. And every single day will be worse than the last. Douglas collapsed into sobs, trembling like a cornered animal, begging for mercy that had already been decided against him. The FBI flooded in at 11:15 a.m. Douglas was dragged out screaming, his face captured by every camera waiting on the street outside. By noon, his mugshot was on every screen in America. And in the safe house, Sofia held Emma and watched the arrest unfold on the news, and for the first time in months, the weight on her chest lifted just enough for her to breathe. 1 year later, the October air turned cold and clean again, the kind of dry cold that reminded Sofia Voss she was alive. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office on the 32nd floor of the Meridian building, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Navy suit, tailored at the shoulders, her dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested authority without demanding it. Through the window, San Francisco sprawled beneath her, the bay catching the last light of sunset, the Golden Gate Bridge burning orange in the distance. She had not imagined this view 6 months ago. She had not imagined anything beyond the next meal, the next shift, the next blow. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Sofia glanced at it. A photo from Emma's school, her daughter at the science fair, 6 years old now, holding up a volcano project with a grin that could light rooms. The stomach pains were gone. The fear was fading. The little girl was laughing again. Sofia saved the photo, her chest tightening with something that felt like gratitude mixed with disbelief. The video call had ended 15 minutes earlier. A young woman, 23, recently extracted from a trafficking network. Sofia had looked into her eyes and seen herself from a year ago, the hollow terror, the certainty that escape was impossible, the belief that she deserved what was happening to her. You are not alone, Sofia had said, her voice steady in a way she still did not quite believe it could be. We will find you housing. Legal help. Everything you need. I have been exactly where you are. There is a way out. The woman had cried. Not the violent sobs of breaking, but the quiet tears of someone beginning to believe in survival. Sofia turned from the window. The eviction notice hung framed on her office wall, the 12-day deadline in red ink now a symbol instead of a death sentence. 12 days until homelessness. She had lived in those 12 days for an entire lifetime. Now they were relics. The elevator down to the parking garage made no sound. She had learned to notice silence now, to appreciate it. The hum of machinery, the soft ding at each floor, the whoosh of doors opening, these were the sounds of safety. Not rain hammering on a broken windshield. Not the rumble of engines that meant men in black were coming. The Italian restaurant was 12 blocks from her apartment. Somewhere in the past year, Nicholas Bianchi had bought it, renovated it, turned it into something clean. Sofia did not ask him why he chose that particular place, the place where Douglas Hale had watched his empire collapse on a phone screen, trembling like a cornered animal. Maybe some men needed to transform the sites of their violence into something else. Maybe that was how they survived what they had done. The private booth in the back was hers now, reserved for Tuesday evenings. The Survivor Support Group. 8 women tonight, seated around candlelight, their stories overlapping like threads being woven into something stronger. "You gave me hope when I had none," one woman said. She had been freed from Victoria Ashford's network 6 months ago, one of 17 victims recovered in the raids. She was learning to work again, to eat without guilt, to sleep without nightmares visiting her in the dark. "I did not know anyone came back from what we went through." Sofia reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was small. It meant everything. "Someone did the same for me," Sofia said. "I am just passing it forward. That is how we survive this. We pull each other out. We refuse to let anyone drown alone." The meeting ended at 9 o'clock. Sofia drove her sedan, paid in full, registered in her name, hers in a way nothing had ever been hers, toward the penthouse apartment she shared with Emma. The little girl would be asleep by now, her nightlight shaped like a star casting soft shadows across her room. Sofia would check on her, would listen to her breathing, would stand in the doorway for exactly 3 minutes remembering what it felt like to not know if she would survive the night. The apartment was silent when she stepped inside. The kind of silence that meant safety. Sofia moved through the darkness, did not turn on lights, did not want to break the stillness of this ordinary evening. She stood at the window that overlooked the city, the same window she had stood at countless times in the past year, wondering where he was. 1 year. 11 months and 22 days since she had last seen Nicholas Bianchi. He had disappeared after the arrests. His men had explained it to her with careful words. He felt his world was too dangerous, she deserved safety, he had made sure she had everything she needed but kept his distance. She respected the choice. She understood the logic. And she could not stop thinking about the man who had saved her, who had wept over her daughter's pain, who looked at her like she mattered. Sofia touched the window glass. Her breath fogged it. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you. Wherever you are." A voice behind her, "I am right here." She spun. Nicholas Bianchi stood in her living room doorway, and for a moment Sofia could not breathe. Same black coat from that highway night. Same stillness that made the air around him seem to stop moving. Older somehow, lines around his eyes that had not been there before, but softer too, like something sharp inside him had finally been allowed to rest. "How did you?" Sofia began. "Your security system," Nicholas said. "I still have access. I hope that is okay." Sofia laughed, and tears came with it, sudden and hot. "You disappeared for a year and now you break into my apartment. I wanted to make sure you did not need me anymore," he said, stepping fully into the candlelight. "That you could stand on your own. That Emma had everything she needed. That you were safe without me. And?" Sofia whispered. "And you can," Nicholas said. "You are extraordinary. Your business is thriving. You helped 17 women rebuild their lives. You finished your MBA while working 40 hours a week and raising a child alone. You did not need me." Silence stretched between them, the kind of silence that contained entire conversations. "But I need you," he said finally. Sofia did not move, afraid that if she did, this moment would shatter like glass. Nicholas continued, his voice low and honest. I came back because some people are worth every risk, every choice, every consequence. I spent a year trying to convince myself that staying away was protecting you. That my world, violence, blood, enemies, was too dangerous for someone like you. But the truth is I was protecting myself. Because losing you would destroy me, and I have never let anyone matter enough to have that power over me. Sofia stepped forward, her hand reaching for his face, touching the scar above his eyebrow. The scar that had scared her once. The scar that now meant safety. You saved my life, she said. You saved Emma's life. You gave us everything. You saved mine first, Nicholas interrupted. You reminded me why I do this. Why I fight. I have spent 10 years being a weapon, a blade, a thing people fear. You looked at me and saw a person. You trusted me with your daughter. Do you understand what that meant? Sofia closed the remaining distance between them. She kissed him slowly, tasting salt and warmth and the future she had not dared to imagine. When she pulled back, both of them were breathing hard. Yes, she said. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Pull back to show the penthouse balcony, the two of them silhouetted against San Francisco's skyline, the city lights glittering like a promise being kept. 6 months later, Emma's 7th birthday party unfolded in a park under bright sun. The little girl ran between Nicholas and Sofia, laughing, her dress spinning as Nicholas lifted her high and spun her while Sofia captured the moment on her phone. This family they had built was untraditional but real. Solid. Built on survival and second chances and the choice to keep choosing each other. Sofia's office door opened during a client consultation. Nicholas appeared with coffee, her favorite, remembered from months of learning her in the darkness. She looked up, caught his eye, smiled. They were partners now, in business and in life, using his resources and her experience to dismantle trafficking networks across the West Coast. The work was hard. The work was dangerous. Together they were unstoppable. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that rescue is possible. Subscribe and turn on notifications because tomorrow we have another story that will restore your faith in second chances. Drop a comment telling us, have you ever been someone's rescue, or has someone been yours? Your story matters. We read every single comment. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We wish you good health, joy, and days filled with peace and happiness. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.